Coming up, we're following breaking news out of Freeport where a plane crashes off the western shore of Grand Bahama. We're also following breaking news out of the House of Assembly, news you'll hear first here.
Staff at the Princess Margaret Hospital taking serious exception to dealing with criminal cases. We've got the details, so stay tuned.
In sports news, a banner year for swimming, and they aren't finished yet. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report, starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
Breaking news tonight as authorities are reporting 4 possible fatalities following a tragic plane crash in waters just 5 miles off Freeport, Grand Bahama.
Information is still slowly coming in, and ZNS News has learned that search and recovery teams are still at the crash site, which we're told has been inaccessible for most of the day due to low tide.
It is also still unclear how many people were on board that flight, and the identities of the 4 believed to be dead have yet to be confirmed.
Our Joan Davis Roll from our Northern Service has been following the breaking story and has these latest developments.
An aviation tragedy has resulted in the loss of life. Early Monday, officials were notified that there were no survivors, as all persons on board perished and their bodies were recovered from the wreckage of the ill-fated Cessna 340 aircraft inbound from Florida. Officials say while on approach from Florida into Grand Bahama, something went tragically wrong, as the private aircraft they were on suddenly fell from the sky.
Shortly after 10 a.m., police control room received a phone call from control tower and reported that a twin-engine Cessna plane had crash-landed some 5 miles off from Freeport, Grand Bahama. Initial report is that the plane has landed in some shallow waters, and it is believed that 3 males, Caucasian, may have been in that aircraft. At this time, Police Defense Force, Basra, EMS, everybody's on board now, trying to assist in a rescue mission.
Bahamas SC rescue officials say they were hoping it would be a search and rescue effort, but within minutes they were forced to shift their mission to search and recovery, searching for not only 3 bodies, but 4. Basra Executive Justin Snisky.
We immediately launched our vessels in the area. We had 3 people on board a vessel. We proceeded to the area location. Due to the shallow waters in the area, extreme shallow, low tide approaching, we were unable to get very close to it. We had a Good Sam aircraft out of the air traffic control, diverted them. They came by, gave us a direct guiding course to it. Our vessel was able to approach near the vicinity of the aircraft, make way by foot to the aircraft, where unfortunately it was discovered there was no survivors on board.
Officials say the recovery efforts were impeded as low tide played a factor as they attempted to get to the mangled wreck.
Emergency rescue team just came back. They gave us an update, debriefing on the situation. Unfortunately, due to the conditions and the shallow waters that we had out there, they were unable to do a recovery at that time. We've spoken with the U.S. Coast Guard, who had a helo in the area. They did an on-scene check for us, confirming what we confirmed on the ground. At this time, our efforts with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Marine Division, and the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the heads to be, we came together and we came up with another approach. We're getting a flatboat so we can get out close to the area. We can get approximately within about half a mile of the aircraft at this time. With the flatboats, we're going to deploy personnel in the water and have them proceed to drag the flatboats to the scene and try to make the recovery.
After hours of attempting to recover the bodies, it was shortly before 4 p.m. when their mission was a success.
As far as we're concerned, from Basra's standpoint, it's an unfortunate, tragic day that happened, an event that happened, and our thoughts and prayers do go out to the family of the victims.
The identity of the crash victims are being withheld pending notification of next of kin. Joan Davis Roll, ZNS Network News.
Other breaking news tonight, Prime Minister Perry Christie announcing that Fort Charlotte MP Andre Rollins has resigned as whip of the Progressive Liberal Party. This as Rollins has taken strong positions during debates in Parliament. More recently, his opposition to some of the proposed gender equality bills. The whip's main function is to ensure that parliamentarians are all on one accord with what government brings to Parliament. The Prime Minister said knowing the sensitivity of the position, Rollins did the right thing.
I have read the letter and I accept it because that's the right thing for him to do. When you take positions that are directed as a part of personal exchanges for a whip, then you make your position untenable with respect to that position. He understood that. He understood it from the day he met with us. He volunteered it. And so therefore, I'm satisfied, Mr. Speaker, that he did the right thing, and I accept it.
Well, unanimity on the constitutional bills on gender equality appeared to be in doubt in the House of Assembly last week. This morning, however, debate on the 4 bills continued. This as the government announced that the wording of the bills in question will be revised. While members all agree on the concept of gender equality, some members went further in their expression to the offense of others. Carla Palmer has details.
A question asked and answered as to whether the government revised the wording of the constitutional bills to be amended. Government leader in the House, Dr. Bernard Nottage, says yes.
The government does intend during the course of the debate to share the proposed amendments with members of the public when we have from both sides of the House an expression that they have looked at the bills and their opinion on those bills. We didn't want to do that prior to getting that information.
Getting the answer he hoped for, Member of Parliament for Montague, Mr. Richard Lightburn, continued to criticize the government for not working hard enough, he says, to get the questions right from the start.
I must question whether we are, as one of my colleagues stated, placing the cart before the horse. It would seem preferable to have the bills formulated, then circulate them for discussion, and theoretically, the government may accept suggested amendments arising from those discussions and then finalize the bills for debate in Parliament, but not as we are doing, amending as you debate, passing a bill, and then explaining it to the public and having a referendum.
Before expressing support for the bills, Mr. Lightburn advised the government to push back the November 6th date for the referendum to ensure, he says, that the government gets the whole process right. Marathon MP Jerome Fitzgerald listened to younger members of the House and says, quote, "It's a thinking he wants nothing to do with."
I know that being opposed to equality for women and men under our Constitution and under our laws is not part of new generation thinking.
The MPs for Marco City, Gregory Moss, and Fort Charlotte's Andre Rollins responded.
I have no issue with gender equality. I've said that repeatedly in my contribution. None whatsoever. One. Secondly, that there is no question as to what is the definition of sex. That's never been a part of my contribution. The question before the House is the effect, not the definition, the effect of defining sex as an area against which we cannot discriminate without going further and putting in place a proviso that by so defining it, you're not providing for same-sex marriages. There's no need.
The entire exercise, unfortunately, is being wrapped in intellectual dishonesty and deception. The public is entitled to know the facts. And if we're not prepared to provide them with all of the information that relates to a very important and critical decision we put before them, dealing with the most sacred document within any sovereign nation, that of the Constitution, if we're not prepared to do that, then none of us are fit to represent the Bahamian people in this honorable place.
Mount Moriah's Arnold Forbes and Central Grand Bahamas' Nico Grant both supported the bills. Reporting for ZNS Network News, I'm Carla Palmer.
Union of Tertiary Educators of the Bahamas Vice President of External Relations, Jennifer Isaacs-Dotson, says she's dismayed by the level of discourse which has arisen in the wake of the government's attempt to bring about gender equality through a compendium of bills now before Parliament. Two of the fears expressed are that the bills will lead to foreign men taking advantage of Bahamian women in their quest for citizenship, and that the bills could open the door for gay marriage. Those bills have been revised, but Isaac Stotson says she supports the bills, but the public needs to be better educated on them.
We know that the government is meeting international conventions that they've signed on to, such as CEDAW, of course, which I support. I think a lot of the discourse that is happening is through misinformation, through miseducation. And I think we need to we should educate before we attempt to make change. And I think we're doing it backwards. We're saying we can do this, and then now we're trying to educate, which is almost on the backside. The important part is to educate your populace. And it should start from the schools.
Now, Isaac Stotson, who says education is crucial at this point, adds that as the government moves to eliminate gender-based discrimination, discrimination in other areas must also be eliminated from the country's constitution.
I think if you're going to remove discrimination from our constitution, we need to do it in all facets. We need to remove discrimination in all areas. The fact that we can't gamble in the casino is a discrimination. And those are things, so if we're going to do this, we need to remove all forms of discrimination from our constitution. But of course, as a woman, I of course support all of the legislation that is being brought forward.
In other news, uncertainty looms at the College of the Bahamas as to when a new president will be appointed to head the institution. The nation's premier tertiary institution has been without a president for more than a year now, and the Union of Tertiary Educators of the Bahamas, UTEB, is calling for the decision to be finalized. Cleopatra Murphy today spoke with union officials.
President of the Union of Tertiary Educators of the Bahamas, Mark Hume, says the College of the Bahamas is in a state of limbo. The College of the Bahamas Council made its recommendation 2 months ago for former President Dr. Rodney Smith, but Education Minister the Honorable Jerome Fitzgerald has not yet approved the appointment.
We know that Cabinet meets tomorrow, and we hope that the Minister is able to address this with his Cabinet colleagues, provide the chairman with an answer up or down, so that the college can have some confidence again. We need some reason to be motivated and excited again.
Teachers Union Vice President Jennifer Isaac Stotson says the college community is concerned that a president is not in place, as the college needs clear leadership. Despite some criticism over the selection process, in which Smith beat out 3 others for the post of president, Isaac Stotson is confident in his leadership abilities.
In the very short time that Dr. Smith was here, he made a big difference, not only in the physical surroundings of the college, but also in the morale of the faculty, staff, and students. And I think at this point where we are in 2014, that is exactly what we need at this point to move us into transition to university.
Students are set to return to the classroom on Monday, and Hume says it is vital to have a leader in place to determine the college's way forward. Cleopatra Murphy, ZNS Network News.
Well, new at 7, Fitzgerald telling ZNS News that there is a process for such appointments and unions can expect the appointment soon.
I mean, I share their concerns, but it's not as if COB is not without a leader. They have been going on now for some time, but we understand the anxiety, and I share that anxiety as well. But just as the process went for recommendation, there's a process for approval, and I want to make sure that we get that right and we get the requisite support we need one way or the other.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Lux Men's Warehouse.